Chapter 1695. But the energy that surged in the air could even burn their skin and hair. It was clearly immortal power, which was a level higher than spiritual power. Boom! The sword slashed down, gravel flew everywhere, and the ground shook. Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan were forced to separate. The Bixie sword turned and flew towards Jiyu Yuchong. Nguilan was about to help her husband, but suddenly saw a snow-white ball of fur flash in front of her, and suddenly become bigger. Awu tilde 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 the fat rabbit let out an angry roar, and pounced towards Nguilan. A quarter of an hour later, Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan were panting, and they looked a little haggard. But their eyes were flickering with flames that were almost boiling. It's the immortal physique. It's actually the immortal physique. Jiyu Yuchong's voice was almost trembling. And it's the immortal physique that has already ascended to the hollow immortal level. Ha 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 ha, Guilan, we really made the right choice this time. Even in the Shoshian continent, it was difficult to find 1 in 10 million people with the immortal physique. According to the legends, as long as it was refined into an elixir and consumed, it would be able to become immortal and ascend to immortality. And they actually found it. Nguilan touched the wound on her face and looked at Xiaobao coldly. That's the immortal spirit body for you indeed. To think that a mere level 3 false immortal would be able to injure 2 golden immortals like us. Nguilan was actually extremely shocked. It was not just the heaven-defying strength of the 5-year-old Xiaobao. There was also that strange furry rabbit. When she was fighting with it just now, it actually almost swallowed a piece of flesh. It was not biting, but directly swallowing. It was as if the flesh was not under her control, and wanted to tear it apart and rush towards the rabbit's mouth. And that sword. Even if it was a deity king weapon, the aura that it emitted should not be so frightening. Even the students from the Alcade branch, who looked ordinary, were more frightening than the others. After withstanding such terrifying attacks from her and Jiyu Yuchong, they could actually stand up and fight together with the baby. 7 small ants, not even a golden core stage cultivator. They actually forced the 2 golden immortals into a difficult situation. It was simply unimaginable. Where did these people, especially that baby, come from? However, Jiyu Yuchong was not interested in thinking about this. At this moment, he even threw the Bixie sword to the back of his mind. His heart and eyes were filled with the immortal spirit body. As long as he could obtain the immortal physique, breaking through to the profound immortal stage was just around the corner. Jiyu Yuchong's burning gaze landed on Little Treasure. At this moment, Little Bao's face was ghastly pale, and there was a bloody hole on his shoulder that was gurgling with blood. His tiny body was trembling slightly due to the extreme weakness caused by the exhaustion of his immortal power. Beside him, the fat rabbit fell limply to the ground, unconscious. In front of him, the people of the Xiao Yarrow sect were lying on the ground, but they were still trying to protect him, and refused to pass out. Little Treasure pursed his lips, and his face was stretched taut. Something hot seemed to want to spill out of his eyes, but he held it back. Jiyu Yuchong walked toward him step by step, his eyes shining with greed. "You're not allowed." Lung Yumor grabbed his leg. "You're not allowed to touch my martial nephew." Jiyu Yuchong chuckled coldly as he kicked the man away and walked over to Xiaobao. In the end, it was as if his entire palm was soaked in blood. Jiyu Yuchong's eyes widened in shock. The expression of disbelief on his face slowly twisted into one of horror. What are you doing?" Jiyu Yuchong let out a terrified roar. It was impossible not to tremble, impossible not to fear. This was because he discovered that after Chu Moli's hand had grabbed his wrist and Chu Moli's hand had slowly turned red, his celestial power had actually been madly pouring towards Chu Moli. This was not ordinary celestial power, but the source of celestial power. Once it was lost, it could not be easily replenished. Then, she suddenly recalled Lung Qingwan's hysterical scream. Jun Muyan, who do you think you are? What right do you have to gain the Emperor's favor? You bitch. Why won't the Emperor accept me even after you're dead? Ha 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 ha, Jun Muyan, I will soon have your looks, and replace your destiny and life. I will marry Di Mingju, and become the future mistress of the polar domain. And Guelan's eyes widened and her lips trembled. She suddenly remembered what Li Zupeng had said about the woman with the zither. Jun Mu Yang. That Shun musician's successor of Yenwu continent, Jun Muyan, she's actually still alive. How was this possible? Chapter 1698. Mu Yang looks at the bloody mess on the ground, and the hand holding the Tianmo Qin can't stop trembling. Because the operation needs an absolutely enclosed and quiet environment. So she had Xing Danqing isolate the entire space with a protective shield. She can't hear any sound inside, and she can't sense what's happening outside. However, when the operation is about to be completed, Mu Yang feels a burst of palpitations and panic. Su Zi's life is in her hands. If she leaves now, it's tantamount to directly taking Su Zi's life. Mu Yang can only suppress her panic and finish the operation as fast as possible. She also tells Xing Danqing to observe Su Zi's condition, and then hurriedly leaves. However, even if she already has a bad premonition, the scene she sees still makes her brain explode, and she almost completely loses her mind. It's just a short 2 hours, everything was clearly fine before she entered the operation room. But now, her Xiao Bao and her fellow apprentices are all covered with cuts and bruises, and they're barely breathing. Nyang Qin. Xiao Bao didn't cry in the face of such pain and despair, but now he can't help but burst into tears, swirling in his eyes. He wants to throw himself into Mu Yang's arms and tell her his fear and grievances. But he immediately remembers that he's already a little man. He vowed to become very, very strong, to protect his mother. Xiao Bao swallows back his tears, picks up the Bixia sword, and walks to Mu Yang's side. He didn't come to seek comfort, he came to fight with his mother. Xiao Bao wants to protect his martial uncle, and protect his loved ones. Mu Yang doesn't hug and comfort Xiao Bao as usual, but coldly plucks the Tianmo Qin. Echo sound activates. Rich spiritual power slowly flows into the bodies of the Xiao Yarrow sect people and Xiao Bao, soothing their injured bodies. The sound of the zither changes, and the realm of stars activates. The people of the Xiao Yarrow sect slowly closed their eyes and fell asleep. Mu Yang, Xiao Bao, you go and protect martial uncle and martial uncle. Xiao Bao opens his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, he straightens his small body and carefully drags the unconscious Yun Ruohan and the others to the side, firmly guarding in front of them. Just now, martial uncle has been protecting him, and now Xiao Bao also has to protect martial uncle. The fat rabbit wobbles over to Xiao Bao's side, and next to him, he lies down. Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan also recovered from the shock. The trace of fear in his heart was slowly replaced by excitement. Jiyu said faintly, I was wondering, how could there be so many treasures in a small academy in the lower realm, and even a celestial physique? Jun Muyan, you're actually still alive. His voice paused for a moment before he asked tentatively, what about the emperor? Is he also in the cultivation continent? Mu Yang looks at him coldly and doesn't answer. Jiyu Yuchong immediately laughed out loud. I'm afraid the emperor has already forgotten about a lowly woman like you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have not appeared until now. If that's the case. His eyes shine brightly and a powerful pressure suddenly erupts from his body. Then the zither in your hand and the Shun musician inheritance in your body will all be mine. Ha 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 ha. Mu Yang, if you want the Tianmo Qin and the Shun musician's inheritance, then it depends on whether you have the life to take it or not. Jiyu Yochong's smile froze as he glared at the girl in front of him. Just now, he had unleashed the aura of a golden immortal. Chapter 1699. Even a cultivator at the crossing calamity stage would not be able to withstand such a terrifying pressure. Those with lower cultivation bases would directly vomit blood and faint. Li Zupeng, for example, had only been affected by the aftershock, and his eyes had already rolled back as he fainted on the ground. However, the two people in front of him, one big and one small, seemed to completely disregard his pressure. On the contrary, the killing intent and sharpness emitted from Mu Yang's body caused his hair to stand on end. Jiyu Yuchong was furious, but he also had an ominous premonition. Old woman, he said in a low voice, Let's join forces and finish this quickly. Nguyen nodded. This woman was able to escape from the hands of the young master, so we definitely can't let our guard down. If we really fail miserably in such an easy task, we won't have the face to see Sect Master again. After saying that, a powerful spiritual power suddenly burst out from the two of them. Muyan's movements are also very fast. In a flash, the Tianmo Qin turns into 7 swords, revolving around her. At the same time, the astral realm was released, and the tune of graceful feather slowly changed. After upgrading the Shun musician skills to the 5th level, in addition to the upgrade of the original skills. In fact, Muyang also obtained 2 new skills. The other was a medic skill called Calm Soul. The other was a martial skill called Lotus Steps. Lotus Blossoming Step was a strange movement skill that used the sound of the zither to drive the body's rhythm and stimulate the potential of the Shouju's speed. The disadvantage was that at the beginning and intermediate stage of Lotus Step by Step, it could only be used by burning the spiritual energy in one's body. The more spiritual power he burned, the faster the movement of Lotus Blooming Steps became. Be it in the air, on land, or even in the water. As long as Lotus Blooming Steps is activated, Muyan's figure can shuttle through the air like a ghost, making it impossible for people to catch her. After the change in tune, the sound of the zither abruptly rose in pitch, alternating between thick and thin, faintly whimpering, as if countless ghosts were passing through the air. Lotus Steps activated. Almost at the same time, 3 figures suddenly flew into the sky and fought. Every move and every style was as fast as lightning, so fast that people couldn't even catch a glimpse of it. Little Bao stared fixedly at the sky while the immortal force within his body circulated with all his might, and his little hands unconsciously clenched tightly. Chu Moli's voice suddenly sounded beside her ear. I didn't expect little junior sister's strength to actually reach such a level. He did not know when he had left, floating like a dream. On his pale face, a pair of bottomless eyes stared at the sky. Whether it was the 3 Academy competition or exposing Di Yudao, in fact, Mu Yang had never used her full strength. The people of the Xiao Yarrow sect always knew that Mu Yang was very strong. Let's not talk about anything else and just talk about the blood-slaughtering sword formation left behind by little martial uncle. Now, every member of the Carefree sect could easily survive for 2 hours in the blood-spitting sword formation, which contained 40 streams of sword chi. Even a golden core cultivator would not be able to stay in the blood slaughter sword formation for more than 2 hours. Many students from the Starry School came to observe the Alcade branch's daily training and witnessed the power of the blood slaughter sword matrix. They all called them perverts. However, what these people did not know was that little junior sister was many times more perverted than they were. Chu Moli only knew that as early as half a month ago, before little Bao came, the sword chi of Mu Yang's blood slaughter sword matrix had already increased to 100 streams. Moreover, her blood slaughter sword matrix was specially made by little Uncle Master. Every stream of sword chi was infinitely close to the power of a nascent soul cultivator. Chapter 1700. The people of the Xiao Yarrow sect have always known that their little junior sister is very strong and abnormal. However, Chu Moli only realized it at this moment. Just how strong is his junior sister, Jun Muyan? Perhaps, just a few days ago, even if she had to personally confront Di Yudao, she wouldn't have suffered any losses. However, even so. But Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan aren't Di Yudao, and they're definitely not ordinary nascent soul cultivators. They're even several times stronger than out-of-body realm and passing tribulation realm cultivators. Even in the Shoujian continent, their strength is suppressed by the heavenly Tao. But it's definitely not something that a little cultivator at the peak of Anidia like Muyan can contend against. The 3 figures in the air suddenly separate. Muyan's complexion is as pale as snow, but her expression is still as cold as ice. Her right hand lightly grabs at the void. The glittering and translucent 7 absolute swords slowly take shape in her hand. Jiyu Yuchong and Nguelan's complexions are ashen, their eyes faintly flickering with fear and horror. Suddenly, Nguelan clutches her chest. On her body, from her left shoulder to the right lower abdomen, there's an abrupt split open, and blood gushes out. Nguilan quickly takes out an elixir and swallows it. This superficial wound is quickly healed under the effect of the elixir, and it doesn't cause her any major harm. But her expression doesn't ease, instead it becomes malevolent. Old man, this woman absolutely cannot be left alive. Jiyu Yuchong firmly nods. Who could have thought that a little girl at the Anedia stage would be able to evenly match them for dozens of rounds? Even Nguilan, a golden immortal, was careless for a moment and was confused by her strange movements, and suffered a sword wound. Nguilan is currently in perfect condition, but that's because Muyan's cultivation is really too low. The damage she can cause to the two of them is negligible. But what if this woman is given a little more time to grow? Wait until her cultivation gets higher and her spiritual power gets stronger and stronger. The power of each sword, coupled with her strange movements, what kind of frightening opponent would she be? The muscles on Jiyu Yochong's face twitches, and his heart surges with joy. Fortunately, they came to the Xiozhen continent. Fortunately, they found Muyan before she had matured. Otherwise, in time, she would become a big problem for Tianyi men like the Shun musicians in the past. Jiyu Yuchong slowly exhales, and a sinister smile gradually appears on his face. If I'm not mistaken, that strange movement of yours just now has exhausted all your spiritual power. Nguilan, Muyan, no matter how talented you are, if you want to win against us, you will have to cultivate for at least another 10 years. Hehe, but you no longer have this opportunity. Before she could finish her words, Nguilan suddenly leapt, pouncing towards Xiao Bao and Chu Moli. Her movements are as fast as lightning. Furthermore, he was still talking a moment ago, but in the next moment, he attacked without any warning. It wasn't even Mu Yang who was attacking, but the 5-year-old baby Xiao Bao. Muyan's face. The Yang CHS's Mu He managed to block Nguilan's attack on Xiao Bao and Chu Moli. Mu's Chen Luo Qi in Xiang, whose? Mu each, Xiao Chen, the Ti Li Yang's is a palm. Mu's. Mu. Muyan couldn't dao. Finally, she couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Nyang Qin. Xiao Bao screams, throwing himself to Muyan's side. Tears roll down from his big eyes. Chapter 1701. Nyang Qin, you're hurt. Mu Yang gently caresses Xiao Bao's wet face and softly says, Xiao Bao, don't be afraid. Nyang Qin is fine. But she has no spare energy to comfort Xiao Bao. Because Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan have clearly discovered that this diversion tactic is effective. So, they attack the defenseless people of the Xiaoyaro sect once again. Mu Yang's hands quickly form a seal in the void. Colorful light flashes. The 7 absolute swords fly back to his hands and turn back into the Tianmo Qin. Hum. The sound of the Qin is like a golden spear. A protective shield quickly rises around the 7 people of the Xiaoyaro sect. Divine hands weave the heavens. There is a loud bang. Nguilan and Jiyu Yochong's attacks simultaneously fall on the sound wall. The protective shield makes a cracking sound and instantly shatters. Mu Yang, who is playing the Qin, spits out another mouthful of blood because of the backlash. But she doesn't dare to slack off in the slightest. The sound of the Qin rises again. The divine hands weave the heavens, weaves a new sound wall, firmly protecting her brothers and sisters. The usual leisurely smile on Chu Moli's face has long disappeared. It is replaced by a bottomless gloominess and the shattered protective shield in his eyes. He suddenly says loudly, Jun Mu Yang, are you stupid? Protecting us will only speed up your death. If you die, we won't live either. There is a loud bang and the sound wall of the divine hands weave the heavens breaks again. Mu Yang's body shakes. Her spiritual power is almost exhausted. But she doesn't hesitate to pluck the strings again. Chu Moli clenches his hands into fists and suddenly smashes them on the ground. The back of his hands is dripping with blood, but he doesn't feel it. Jun Mu Yang, are you a fool? He says in a hoarse voice, we've only been brothers and sisters for a few months. Is it worth it for you to risk your life for us? However, in response to him, the sound wall still unhesitatingly weaves again, and it once again collapses with a loud bang. Chu Moli had never hated his own incompetence so much, hated the time he had squandered away so much in the past. If only the people of the Xiaoyaro sect were a little stronger, if they were so strong that they didn't need little junior sister's protection and could stand beside her and fight shoulder to shoulder with her. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect that the Shun musician who once wanted to destroy the world, the successor of the new generation, would be so soft-hearted, an idiot who doesn't even care about his own life for others. And Guilan laughed loudly. The hammer in her hand suddenly grew larger and smashed down on the sound wall. Fart. Blood sprays on the Tianmo Qin like rain. Mu Yang's body swayed. Finally, she couldn't hold on any longer and softly fell down. Chi Huang's voice faintly reached his ears. I'll help you. I'll kill them for you, mother, mother. Xiao Bao's cries were heart-wrenching and lung-splitting, and then turned into a frenzied killing intent. How dare you hurt my mother? I'll kill you. Mu Yan absent-mindedly opens her eyes and sees Xiao Bao's figure recklessly rushing out. Her heart suddenly palpitates. Her voice trembled as she said, Chi Huang, help me protect Lil Treasure. Chi Huang roars, Jun Mu Yan, you stupid woman, why do you only care about other people's lives? Do you know that if you continue to exhaust yourself like this, you'll die? Save Xiao Bao. No. Chi Huang's voice is callous and resolute. No one can order me. Jun Mu Yan, I want you to live, so you must live. Chapter 1702. As soon as his voice falls, a mellow and powerful energy slowly flows into Mu Yang's body. Little by little, it heals the fatal injuries in her body. And Chi Huang's figure fades a bit more. Between his eyebrows, a flame-like pattern slowly appears. But it quickly disappears. But Mu Yang can't care about this right now. She watches as Xiao Bao rushes towards Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan, his little figure drowning in their attacks. She immediately feels her heart and courage shatter. Xiao Bao. Jiyu Yuchong grasps the air and grabs Xiao Bao's neck. Feeling the power and tenderness of the immortal physique under his palm, his face reveals a crazed and twisted smile. Little doll, since you've delivered yourself to the door, then don't blame this old man for devouring this delicious immortal physique of yours first. The Bixie sword suddenly flies over, chopping down at Jiyu Yuchong, but it's sent flying with a casual slap. Mu Yang's eyes are about to split open, but her body, which is being repaired by Chi Huang, is simply unable to budge. Xiao Bao's neck is gripped, but there's no trace of fear or pleading for mercy in his eyes as he looks at Jiyu Yuchong. There's only an ice-cold murderous intent. You killed me, hurt my mother, my father will never let you off. Ha ha ha. Jiyu Yuchong laughs. Your father? Who do you think your father is? A trash from the lower realms, how could he not let me off? As soon as his voice falls, he suddenly hears a pop that's neither too light nor too heavy. His arm grabbing Xiao Bao's neck unexpectedly bursts apart without warning. Xiao Bao's body falls from the sky, but he doesn't hit the ground. Instead, he's lifted by an invisible force, and is sent into a familiar embrace. Jiyu Yuchong stands in place, dumbfounded. He's even thinking in his mind, what was that sound he just heard? It's like something's broken. Immediately after, a piercing pain spreads from his arm to his brain. Ah! Jiyu Yuchong howls like a pig being butchered, clutching his hand as he falls to the ground. Nguilan's complexion changes, and she rushes over to hug Jiyu Yuchong in shock and anger. But when she sees that his right hand has been completely blown up into minced meat, she immediately turns her head and snaps. Who is it? Who dared to hurt me? The enraged voice came to an abrupt halt, as if a crowing rooster had been choked by someone. Nguilan's eyes were wide open. Her slightly trembling lips turned into violent trembling. His eyes were filled with intense shock and fear. What did you say just now? Who is his father? The tall man skillfully carried the boy in his arms and looked down at them. What do you think Ben Jun is? Emperor. Emperor. Nguilan sat down on the ground. Extreme fear caused her face to contort and her entire body to tremble like a sieve. Jiyu Yuchong comes back to his senses from the pain. He sees Di Mingju holding Xiao Bao, and sees that the two of them have almost identical blue eyes. His whole body goes cold. Yes. Why hadn't he thought of that? How many immortal physiques could there be in this world? This 5-year-old child comes from the lowly Yenwu continent. Where would he get so many treasures? So he's actually the Emperor's son. Earlier, they actually wanted to kill the Polar Domain Imperial Lord's son. At that moment, there was only one thought in Jiyu Yochong's mind. Finished. They're all finished. It's not only him and Nguilan that's finished, even Tianyi Men is finished. Chapter 1703. Xiao Bao blankly stares at the man in close proximity. For a long time, he can't come back to his senses, as if he's dreaming. He reaches out and gently touches Di Mingju's cheek. It's warm and hard. It's his father's embrace, his breath. Di Mingju quickly turns to look at Xiao Bao. His grave and stern brows are filled with unconcealable worry. Is Xiao Bao hurt? Saying that, he looks at Muyan with even more concern, and is about to walk towards him. But at this time, Xiao Bao makes a soft, cautious voice, "Daddy?" Di Mingju turns to meet Xiao Bao's gaze. He sees that those big blue eyes are filled with hope, expectation, uneasiness, and unspeakable grievances. Di Mingju's stone-like heart instantly softens into a complete mess. He hugs the child in his arms tightly, and says in a gentle tone that he has never used before, "Xiao Bao, don't be afraid, Daddy is here." Xiao Bao flattens his mouth, bean-sized teardrops tumbling down from his eyes. At this moment, all the grievances, fear, and panic accumulated in the battle just now finally erupts. "Wow. Bad Daddy. Why did you only come now? Nyangqin was injured. Why didn't you show up? You didn't come when Xiao Bao couldn't find Nyangqin. You didn't come when Xiao Bao was attacked by a monster. You didn't come when Xiao Bao called Daddy little by little. Boo-hoo-hoo, bad Daddy. Xiao Bao doesn't want to talk to you anymore. Boo-hoo-hoo." Di Mingju is flustered as he pacifies the crying person in his arms. After discovering that his pacification is fruitless, he can only put on a stern face and shout in a low voice, "Don't cry. You're a man. How can you cry at the slightest thing?" Xiao Bao finally stops crying after being reprimanded, but he still hugs his neck and sobs. He wipes his snot and tears on his clothes, muttering over and over, "Bad Daddy." Muyan stands up and sees this scene. Her eyes can't help but ache, but her heart is warm, as if it's soaked in honey. Even if Xiao Bao cries bitterly when he reunites with her, he didn't release all of his feelings and grievances. Because in Xiao Bao's subconscious, he had always wanted to be a little man. He wants to protect his mother and not let anyone hurt her. He doesn't want to be a burden to her. However, at this very moment, in front of Di Mingju, he has completely exposed his grievances and frailty. Because for Xiao Bao, Di Mingju is already his relative, someone he can rely on with all his heart and protect his mother together with him. Mu Yang has never been more aware of this than now. In fact, Xiao Bao has always longed for a father like Di Mingju who he worships, who he respects, who he can chase after. Di Mingju finally pacifies Xiao Bao, and directly teleports in front of Mu Yang, pulling her into his embrace. Xiao Bao also comes back to his senses. He doesn't even care about his shyness anymore. He just cried and anxiously throws himself into Mu Yang's arms. "Nyangqin, how are you? You vomited so much blood just now." Mu Yang easily holds her son in her arms. She reaches out and gently wipes away the tears on his face. "Don't be afraid. Look, isn't Nyangqin fine now?" Di Mingju grabs her wrist, and his divine sense penetrates her body. Then there's an astonished expression on his face. Di Mingju doesn't have medical skills, but his cultivation is much higher than Mu Yang's. Chapter 1704. With a casual inspection, he was able to recover the injuries of a small cultivator. Mu Yang's 5 viscera and 6 bowels and dantian had clearly suffered serious injuries. The injury was almost irreversible. However, at this moment, her body was completely unscathed. Just now, there was a powerful energy that cleansed her body. That energy wasn't any weaker than his own. "Yang, your injury is already healed." Di Mingju opens his mouth, very much wanting to ask who healed him. Xiao Bao is already cheering, hugging Muyan's neck. "Nyangqin, you're all right, that's great. Mu Yang strokes his little head. Facing Di Mingju's doubtful gaze, she promptly turns away with a guilty conscience. She softly says, I have a way to treat myself, Di Mingju, don't worry. The matter of 7 brilliants must not be leaked. Especially in front of Di Mingju and young martial uncle. Qi Huang had severely warned her that if she exposed her existence in front of these two people, they would both be consigned to eternal damnation. Mu Yang doesn't want to hide anything from Di Mingju. She doesn't even care that Di Mingju has already guessed her identity as a Shun musician. But Qi Huang was the only exception. Without Qi Huang's permission, before she was certain that it was safe, she would never allow Qi Huang to be exposed. Di Mingju mistakenly thinks that her abnormal recovery is due to the Shun musician's ability, so he throws it to the back of his mind and turns to look at Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan. Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan crawled over on their knees, kowtowing and begging for mercy. Emperor, spare us. Emperor, please spare my life. We didn't know he was your son. I won't dare to do it again. We won't do it again. Looking at their current appearance, they did not have the slightest bit of glory that belonged to the upper realm's golden immortals. Instead, they were like two stray dogs, despairing and helpless. Di Mingju looks down at them coldly. Who sent you here? Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan looked at each other and saw the panic in each other's eyes. Your Majesty, we are. Before they could finish their stuttering words, they heard the man's bone-chilling voice. Tianyi Men and Lung Qingwan still haven't learned their lesson. Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan shuddered, and they were terrified to the point they almost fainted. Monarch! Monarch! We won't dare! We won't dare to do it again. Please spare us, Emperor. Both of their heads smashed into the bluestone floor again and again. They were drenched in blood, but they did not dare to stop. Emperor, I beg you to spare us on account of Tianyi Men's kindness to the polar domain that year. Please spare us one more time. Tianyi Men. Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. He dug out this name from the corner of his memory. In the Shun musician inheritance that Bailey Yinlu instilled in her before her death, and in a part of her memories. Mu Yan seems to have seen the name Tianyi Men before. It is a school that is irreconcilable with the Shun musicians. The sect master of the Tianyi sect, in particular, hated Bailey Yinluo to the core. He had set up schemes and plots several times in an attempt to put Bailey Yinluo to death. But because the Shun musicians have too many enemies, the Tianyi Men can only be considered as one of them. Bailey Yinlu didn't have a deep impression of this sect. The most obvious evidence was that Bailey Yinlu didn't even remember the name of the Tianyi Men's sect master who had repeatedly harmed her. But thinking of this sect's hatred towards the Shun musicians, there was also the hatred of killing Chang Yu in the Yenwu continent, and now almost killing her fellow apprentice brothers. Chapter 1705. Mu Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold glint flickered in her eyes. Di Mingju turns to look at Mu Yan. Yang, how do you want to deal with them? Mu Yang smiles faintly. You decide. She won't use her hatred to kidnap Di Mingju's will. Even if she and Tianyi Men were previously absolutely irreconcilable, but they had done Di Mingju a favor. It's impossible for her to force Di Mingju to be an ungrateful person. As for the enmity with Tianyi Men, she would settle it herself one day at a time in the future. Hearing this, Di Mingju's gaze once again falls on Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan. Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan think that their mention of kindness has moved Di Mingju, and they immediately breathe a sigh of relief. He felt that he had just escaped death. Di Mingju slowly raises his hand to cover Xiao Bao's eyes, the corners of his mouth curling up into a shallow smile. In the next moment, Jiyu Yuchong and Nguilan's expressions of relief suddenly turned into horror. With a loud bang, both of their bodies exploded, flesh and blood splattering everywhere. However, a barrier had already risen in front of Mu Yang and Xiao Bao, and it kept all the filth out. Di Mingju's gloomy and cold voice is like a death god from purgatory. That bit of kindness has long since been used up. How dare he hurt his wife and child over and over again? Tianyi Men, no one should think of escaping this time. The people of the Xiaoyaro sect had just woken up. They were originally filled with worry for Mu Yang and Xiao Bao, but after witnessing with their own eyes how Di Mingju casually waved his hand and caused Jiu Yuchong and Nguyelan's bodies to explode, each and every one of their mouths gaped so wide that one could stuff an egg inside. Didn't they say that those two people came from the Shoshen continent? Wasn't Li Zupeng, a nascent soul cultivator, respectful and fearful when he saw these two? It was 8 against 2, and they were almost completely annihilated, yet they couldn't even scratch the skin of the other party. But how could Teacher Mo cripple someone with a wave of his hand? No. He wasn't crippled, but he didn't even have a complete skeleton left. What was going on? Who exactly was Teacher Mo? Just how strong was he? Li Zupeng, who had also just woken up, was almost scared out of his wits when he saw the scene of Jiu Yuchong and Nguyelan being killed instantly. He curled his body into a ball, desperately trying to reduce his presence, wanting to escape. However, Di Mingju casually grabs him by the throat and lifts him into the air. He was about to turn him into a bloody mist just like Jiu Yuchong and the others. Chu Moli suddenly said, "Instructor Mo, little junior sister, can you hand this person over to me?" Di Mingju's movements pause, his face expressionless as he looks towards Chu Moli. Even if he didn't deliberately release his oppressive might, when Chu Moli looked straight into his eyes, faint beads of sweat still appeared on his forehead. His heart was beating violently in his chest. That was the instinctive fear of the strong and the impulse to be forced to submit. Muyan raises her hand and pats Di Mingju, since third senior brother wants it, then give it to him. Di Mingju narrows his eyes. What do you mean by giving it to third senior brother? Was third senior brother that amazing? However, he still loosens his hand in the end. He directly seals most of Li Zupeng's cultivation, and throws him in front of Chu Moli. After Di Mingju withdraws his gaze, Chu Moli breathes a sigh of relief. He lowers his head to look at Li Zupeng, who has fallen in front of him. The corners of his mouth slowly curve up, revealing a warm and bashful smile. He takes the unconscious Li Zupeng into the space. Chapter 1706. Luo Yu said angrily, "Third senior brother, all of this was caused by that old thing Li Zupeng. You mustn't let this bastard have it easy. Leng Yumor, hehe, little 7, is this your first day knowing third senior brother? Those who fall into his hands will definitely suffer 100 times more than death." Chu Moli smiled warmly, but didn't say anything. His lowered eyes flashed with a dark and resolute light. He slowly clenches his fists, then loosens them little by little. His gaze turns to Muyan, who is not too far away. In his mind, it was as if the scene of his junior sister weaving the sound wall again and again, but each time, it was broken and she vomited blood. He thought that it was time for him to become stronger. In the house, Di Mingju holds Muyan tightly in his arms are like iron pincers, but they're slightly trembling. It was only at this moment that the fear and palpitation in his heart surged. If he had come a step later, Muyan and Xiao Bao might have died in the hands of those two from Tianyi men. As soon as he thinks of this possibility, Di Mingju's heart surges with a crazy murderous intent, itching to overturn the entire Shoshen continent and Shoshen continent. Tianyi men. This is not the first time they have made a move against Mu Yang. It's impossible for me to stay by Mu Yang's side all the time. Even if Ying Mai and the others are guarding her, I can't be completely at ease. A strong killing intent flashes through Di Mingju's eyes. Even Mu Yang felt the fluctuations in his emotions and couldn't help but raise her head to look at him. Di Mingju lowers his head, gently planting a kiss on her forehead. Yang, I have to go back to the Shoshen continent again. Muyan stares blankly. You've just arrived and you're already leaving? Di Mingju's eyes ripple with a smile. Is Yang reluctant to part with Ben Jun? Mu Yang raises her eyebrows and hooks her arm around his neck. She coquettishly looks at him. I haven't seen you for so long, of course I can't bear to part with you. Don't tell me you're willing to do it. Di Mingju breathes heavily, the look in his eyes deepens. He tightened his grip on her waist and lowered his head to kiss her. However, before his lips could touch the soft and tender lips that he had been thinking about day and night, the two of them were suddenly separated by a force. Immediately after, a small hand heavily pushes Di Mingju, but she herself turns her head and burrows into Muyan's arms. Bai Xie said that without a matchmaker, there can't be illicit sexual intercourse. Father is not allowed to kiss mother. Now Nyangqin belongs to Xiaobao alone. For a moment, Di Mingju's face is as black as if a cup of ink has been poured into it. Mu Yang looks at her son, who is in her arms, as if he's protecting a treasure. She can't help but burst into laughter. Di Mingju gnashes his teeth. Who is Bai Xie? In Xiaobao's artifact spirit space, Bai Xie was trembling in fear. RRR, little master, I can't say it, I can't say it. You can't betray me. Unfortunately, Xiaobao very sincerely took out the evil warding sword. Little treasure replied, it's my sword spirit. The moment Di Mingju sees the Bixie sword, he stares blankly. Because with his eyesight and the number of treasures he'd seen, he was actually unable to determine exactly what grade of magic treasure this sword was. But very quickly, he threw this doubt to the back of his mind. Looking at the indistinct shadow of the sword spirit on the sword, he sneered faintly. What else did your sword spirit say? Xiao Bao is about to obediently answer. He hears the Bixie sword humming and trembling as it wails. Little master, I beg you, don't sell me again. I was wrong, isn't that enough? In the future, I won't dare to say that it's a beast to make a girl who's not even 15 years old pregnant out of wedlock. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the room goes quiet for a moment. Chapter 1707. Xiao Bao blinks. He still doesn't quite understand the meaning of Bai Xie's words. But he still can't help but straighten his little face. Bai Xie, don't say that my father is a beast. Muyan smiles and reaches out to touch Xiao Bao's head. Isn't Di Mingju? Before she can finish speaking, she is pulled into a familiar embrace along with Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao is Ben Jun's son. Di Mingju resolutely says, and you, Jun Muyan, can only be my wife. What ex-husband? What Xiao Bao's biological father? To hell with it. Whenever Di Mingju thinks of Muyan's words, I love Xiao Bao's father, he grits his teeth in anger, wishing that he could tear that dead guy into pieces. What the sword spirit said is right. That's a beast, a piece of trash that should be hacked into pieces. Feeling the man's strong embrace and his words without a trace of hesitation, Muyan's gentle and comforting smile turns into sweetness. Xiao Bao, who is stuck in the middle, keeps muttering, Daddy can't kiss mommy. Go away. Di Mingju takes a deep breath, resisting the urge to throw the naughty son away. He holds the back of Muyan's neck and gently kisses her forehead. Wait for me for a few more days. Muyan, what are you going to do when you return to the Shoshan continent? Why do you want to go back when you've just arrived? Could it be that something had happened? She sees the man's lips slowly curve up, revealing an evil smile. Yang Yang, have you forgotten what you promised Ben Jun? As long as we find Xiao Bao, we'll get married. Muyan's eyes slowly widen. The smile on Di Mingju's face deepens. His eyes looking at her are blazing like fire, burning with a domineering determination and desire. Yang Yang, what do you think Ben Jun will do when he returns? Of course, it's to prepare the betrothal gift for you. Shoshan continent, Tianyi Men. Lung Qingwan looks at Liu Ruoxuan, who was brought back by the boy in black, and is so excited that she forgets herself. This is the medicine for the magnificent quicksand. Great. That was great. We're going to get the magnificent quicksand, and I'm going to have Jun Muyan's appearance and luck. Lung Yuexia frowned as she looked at Liu Ruoxuan, who looked like a lump of flesh. Her eyes were filled with disdain. She coldly looked at the blue-clothed boy. This is the catalyst medicine you found? The luck of this catalyst medicine had been almost completely used up. Even if it was made into the magnificent quicksand, how useful would it be? Lung Qingwan grabbed Lung Yuexia's hand. Master, let's quickly refine the magnificent quicksand. Those drafts and elixirs are almost ready. Lung Yuexia glanced at Lung Qingwan, and the disgust in her eyes deepened. But that was fine too. Even if the effect of this magnificent quicksand was not good, there was still Lung Qingwan, that idiot, to try it out first. She said indifferently, I still need to spend some effort to successfully make the magnificent quicksand's medicinal catalyst. Master, tell me, what do you want to do? Your disciple will instruct someone to do it right away. Lung Yuexia had someone bring over a huge cauldron and threw Liu Ruoxuan inside. There was no water inside, and there was no lid either. Instead, there was firewood underneath. This firewood wasn't ordinary firewood, but it was made from dried, silver hornwood, which could withstand spiritual fire and god fire. After she finished preparing, Leng Yuexia's hands formed a seal, and she suddenly shot out a mass of purple-red flame, which fell on the silver hornwood. Chapter 1708. As soon as the purple-red flame touches the dry wood made of silver hornwood, it immediately burns. Liu Ruoxuan is in a comatose state inside the huge furnace. At this time, under this scorching heat that can burn a person's skin, she can't help but let out whimpering moans, waking up. One of her eyes has already been dug out by Zheng Little Fatty. The flesh on her body has been cut off and grown back, and cut again. Every day is a hellish torture. At this time, feeling the scorching heat, she thinks that Zheng Little Fatty is torturing her again. She can't help but let out whimpering pleas for mercy. However, she soon discovers that something is wrong. This isn't the secret room of Yarrow Guang branch. The person beside her isn't Zheng Little Fatty or anyone else from the Xiao Yarrow sect. Lung Qingwan glances at the huge furnace from time to time. Seeing that blood clot being burned little by little, and letting out a blood-curdling scream, she doesn't feel afraid or disgusted. Instead, her eyes are filled with greed. Master, how long before this catalyst can be used as medicine? Lung Qingwan impatiently asks. These days, because the Tianyi men has been removed from the polar domain, it can be said that they have been bullied and given the cold shoulder in the entire Shoshan continent. They're even worse than a small third-rate sect. She, Lung Qingwan, has always been a fairy who is held high above the clouds. When did she become an ant that anyone can step on? No, she absolutely doesn't want to live like this forever. Master, I must quickly take the magnificent quicksand and become Jun Muyan. I really can't go on living like this for another day. Lung Yuexia feels the thin fate coming from the huge furnace. In the end, she still can't help but frown, coldly saying, "Isn't this your fault for being useless? I told you to bring back Jun Muyan's corpse, the Tian Mo Qin in her hands, and the Shun musician inheritance. In the end, you killed her, and you didn't even get her corpse. Being able to become the Shun musician's successor, her fate can only be stronger than this catalyst. If we can use Jun Muyan to make the magnificent quicksand as a catalyst, then it would truly be a miraculous medicine that can let you and our Tianyi men go against the heavens and change our fate." Lung Qingwan thinks of Jun Muyan who died in the Yanwu continent, and she also feels a burst of resentment. That slut. Such a happy death, it's really too easy for her. In the giant cauldron, Liu Ruoxuan, who was already in so much pain that she wanted to die and was in despair, heard their words, but it was like a bolt from the blue. What drug? Was she going to be turned into a drug? No. How could this be? She didn't want to die. She was the darling of the heavens, and there were still many wishes that she hadn't fulfilled. How could she die? Woo-woo. Arth. Liu Ruoxuan threw herself to the side of the roof and screamed with all her might. She wants to say that Jun Muyan is not dead. She wants to talk about the power of the Tian Mo Qin in Muyan's hands, and her identity as a descendant of the Shun musicians. But her tongue had just been cut off by Zheng Little Fatty, and it hadn't recovered yet. Liu Ruoxuan could only cry and beg Lung Qingwan and Lung Yuexia for mercy. However, Lung Qingwan and Lung Yuexia only treated her as a drug catalyst, so why would they care about her? Every time Liu Ruoxuan wanted to jump out of the huge cauldron, she would be ruthlessly hit on the head by a Tianyi men disciple standing at the side with a stick, directly sending her back into the huge cauldron. The flesh on the lower half of her body had completely melted. He did not know what was so special about this fire. Even though Liu Ruoxuan still had demonic energy in her body, her melted flesh could not be restored. She watched helplessly as her legs turned into bones, and later, even the bones turned into powder. Then it was her pelvic cavity, her internal organs. Chapter 1709. Lung Yuexia muttered in disgust. It only took 6 hours to destroy more than half of her luck. Liu Ruoxuan was a medicinal catalyst left behind by an ancient powerhouse. Originally, it would take a long time to kill her. Even if Lung Yuexia had God Fire and Silver Hornwood, Firewood, it would take at least several months to completely melt her into a medicinal catalyst. But now, in just 6 hours, Liu Ruoxuan's body unexpectedly melted irreversibly. This was enough to prove that the medicinal efficacy of Liu Ruoxuan as a medicinal catalyst was not even 1% of what she expected. In the midst of despair, Liu Ruoxuan suddenly felt her own tongue slowly growing out. She was overjoyed and quickly rolled to the edge of the giant cauldron. She climbed up with both hands and screamed, "Jun!" Before she could finish speaking, Lung Qingwan suddenly raised her hand and cut her throat with a sword. She sneered, "What are you shouting for? A lowly thing like you, being able to be this fairy's medicinal catalyst is your blessing." Liu Ruoxuan fell back into the giant cauldron with a bang. Her mouth was wide open, and blood spurted out from her broken throat and gaping mouth. The blood fell into the giant cauldron and was roasted by the scorching temperature, making a sizzling sound. Liu Ruoxuan's eyes were wide open, staring at the top of the cave. Her eyes were filled with resentment, unwillingness, and despair. Another 2 hours passed. Finally, there was only a small skull left in the giant cauldron. After burning for about a quarter of an hour, even the skull was burned into powder and blended into the thick and smelly blood. As the silver hornwood continued to burn, the blood and flesh gradually condensed and slowly turned into a blood-red bead. It spun around and fell on the edge of the giant cauldron. "Master, this is the medicinal catalyst for the magnificent quicksand." When Lung Qingwan picked up the blood-red bead, even her hands were trembling. A pair of insatiable eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Lung Yuexia took a look and saw that this bead looked blood-red, but it was actually full of impurities and cracks. Its quality could be said to be extremely poor. But no matter what, the medicinal catalyst for the magnificent quicksand was obtained. Lung Yuexia looked at Lung Qingwan and revealed a kind smile. "Master will refine the magnificent quicksand for you right now. Qingwan, in the future, the revitalization of our Tianyi men will depend on you." Lung Qingwan desperately nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Master, don't worry. When I become the mistress of the polar domain, Tianyi men will definitely bask in the glory." Just as Lung Yuexia was about to bring the guiding herbs to the alchemy room, a boy stumbled in from outside. His eyes were filled with alarm as he screamed, Sect Master, it's bad. The people from the polar domain had killed their way in. The Emperor is charging in." "What did you say?" Lung Yuexia widened her eyes in disbelief. Polar domain? How could polar domain kill their way in? With a leap, she left the cave and arrived at the top of the highest hall of Tianyi men, looking down. With a single glance, he felt as if his scalp was about to explode. His vision darkened, and he nearly fell from the palace. Only to see that the Tianyi men's mountain-protecting great array had actually disappeared. However, she, the person who controlled the great mountain guarding formation, was completely unaware of it. She did not even know how it had disappeared. In the surroundings of the Tianyi men's inner sect, there was a dense mass of black-clothed immortals. In the Shouxian continent, there wasn't a single person who didn't know what these immortals dressed in uniform and their orderly movements signified. That was the polar domain's fastest blade, Profound Division. Within the Profound Division were all the trusted aides of the polar domain's emperor. Chapter 1710. Only when Di Jun really wants to kill and wants to go to war, would the people of Xian Division be dispatched. Lung Yuexia's body sways, and she finally falls down from the hall, falling heavily to the ground. So, this is the polar domain trying to kill Tianyi men? Master. Lung Qingwan and the others rush over to help her up. Master, what's going on? Why would the polar domain suddenly attack my Tianyi men? Lung Yuexia's complexion is deathly pale, and she mutters in a low voice, Impossible. Absolutely impossible. My Tianyi men is clearly indebted to the polar domain. Di Jun, how could Di Mingju treat us like this? What's going on? Just then, The two black-clothed children who just brought Liu Ruoxuan back run over, battered out of their wits. Their faces are full of fear. Master, 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 and master's wife are dead, their soul lamps are extinguished. Leng Yuexia sucks in a mouthful of cold air. How could this be? Suddenly, her horrified gaze abruptly turns to the polar domain's army surrounding Tianyi men, and she can't help but shiver all over. Could it be that the matter of Qingwan killing Jun Muyan has been discovered? Or could it be that the truth of that year, the truth that Di Mingju absolutely couldn't know, was discovered by him? Leng Yuexia's complexion is deathly pale, and she can't stop trembling. Seeing the densely packed army of the polar domain's Shen division coming closer and closer, an extreme panic wells up in her heart. No. She can't die. Tianyi men must not be broken in her hands. Where there's life, there's hope. Leng Yuexia pulls Leng Qingwan. Go, follow me. Leng Qingwan's face still has a bit of confusion. When she's dragged by Leng Yuexia into the secret room, and then into the dark corridor, Leng Qingwan finally can't help but ask, Master, where are we going? Where? Leng Yuexia roars hysterically. Where else can we go? Of course we're running for our lives. Leng Qingwan, running for our lives. Why should we run for our lives? The magnificent quicksand is about to be successfully refined. As long as I take it and change into Jun Muyan's appearance, Di Jun will be head over heels for me. Master, we don't need to escape at all. Leng Yuexia sneers. The refinement of the wind magnificent quicksand needs at least half a month. Do you think that the Emperor will allow our Tianyi men to survive for half a month? No. No way. Monarch has feelings for me, he wouldn't be so cruel to me. Leng Qingwan grabbed Leng Yuexia's hand and said excitedly, Master, let's go back. As long as I plead with the Emperor, he will definitely give me another half a month. At that time, so long as I have the magnificent quicksand, would I have to worry about the Emperor Monarch not falling head over heels for me? Leng Yuexia looked at her coldly. Are you coming with me or not? Leng Qingwan shook her head repeatedly. Master, you know how difficult it is to collect the magnificent sand's spiritual herbs and immortal herbs. Even if I have to leave, I must still bring those spiritual herbs and immortal herbs back. As she spoke, she was about to turn around. Leng Yuexia's last shred of patience finally ran out. She suddenly raised her hand and a whip appeared in her hand. She ruthlessly lashed it towards Leng Qingwan's body and face. Leng Qingwan's face and body immediately turned into several pieces of flesh. In a split second, her originally elegant complexion became as terrifying and sinister as a ghost. She kept rolling on the ground, wailing and begging for mercy. But Leng Yuexia's gaze when looking at her was like looking at a dirty ant, without the slightest bit of emotion. Chapter 17:11. It wasn't until she had vented enough that she wrapped the whip around Leng Qingwan's neck and sneered, Leng Qingwan, you better remember this, I gave you this life. If I want you to live, you live. If I want you to die, you die. If I want you to be a dog, you can only obediently crawl on the ground. From now on, if you dare to disobey me again, don't blame me for being impolite. At this time, Leng Qingwan was already on the verge of death. She couldn't even hear what Leng Yuexia was saying. She could only cry and beg for mercy. Due to extreme fear, feces and urine flowed into her crotch, and the passage was filled with a foul smell. Leng Yuexia frowned in disgust. Just like that, he wrapped his arm around her neck and dragged her to the other end of the tunnel. As she nears the door, Leng Yuexia turns around to look in the direction of Tianyi men. She gnashes her teeth and mutters, Di Mingju, Shen musician, I, Leng Yuexia, will never admit defeat like this. Just wait for me. As long as she had the magnificent quicksand as a medicinal catalyst, she would one day be able to make a comeback. On this day, in the northern domain of the Shoshen continent, Tianyi men is burnt to ashes by a raging fire. The disciples of Tianyi men raised their swords and surrendered as soon as the people of Polar Domain's Shen division entered the sect. There wasn't even a single person who was stubbornly resisting. The Polar Domain did not exterminate these Tianyi men's disciples and allowed them to disperse on their own. Tianyi men's sect master Leng Yuexia and Leng Qingwan were nowhere to be found. The polar domain issued a kill order to attack Lung Yuexia and Lung Qingwan. From then on, the Xiuxian continent no longer had the Tianyi men. Before Di Mingju leaves, he uses his divine power to place a seal on Xiaobao and the Bixia sword. It was mainly to seal the aura of Xiaobao's immortal physique, in order to prevent the people of the ghost domain from coveting it. As for the Bixia sword, Di Mingju has also noticed its peculiarities. It was clearly the intelligence of a godly monarch artifact, but it had the faint aura of a sacred ancestral artifact. However, calling it a sacred ancestral artifact was not entirely accurate. Even a sacred ancestral artifact could not give birth to an item spirit. At the very least, only the highest grade magic tools in the Xiuxian continent, which are heavenly treasures, can give birth to a tool spirit. And the probability of that happening was extremely low. Even if some magic treasures gave birth to an artifact spirit, they usually only had the intelligence of a child. But Bai Xie's intelligence was unbelievably high. Sometimes, even Mu Yang and Di Mingju can't understand what he's saying. According to Di Mingju's thoughts, he doesn't want Xiao Bao to use such a dangerous and treacherous sword. But now, it had become his son's contracted flying sword. The fates of a man and a sword were linked together. Therefore, Di Mingju can only think of a way to seal a part of the Bixia sword's aura. From then on, in the eyes of others, the Bixia sword was just an ordinary flying sword. At the very least, the people of the cultivation continent would definitely not be able to recognize that this sword was a divine monarch weapon. When Bai Xie realized that his aura had been concealed, he was overjoyed. Originally, he was still incomparably fearful of Di Mingju, this overbearing CEO Great Demon King. He couldn't wait for the little master and mistress to be as far away from him as possible. But now, he happily urged his young master to hug his thigh. "Aya, what's wrong with stepfather? A stepfather can also give you the gentleness of spring. A stepfather is also a flower. Such a golden thigh, let alone as a stepson, even if it was as a grandson, I would still hug him tightly. Little master, I'm telling you, other people said to look for potential stocks. Your stepfather isn't a fucking potential stock, he's basically a leading stock. You must definitely tell mistress to hold on tight. If he's snatched away halfway, it would really be a big loss." Chapter 17:12. Here in the future, when little master becomes a rich second-generation heir, I will be your leg pendant, the kind that can warm your bed, sing, and act cute. Xiaobao rolled his eyes, slapped the noisy artifact spirit back into the space, and turned to find his martial uncles for a spar. Su Zi, on the other hand, had made a perfect recovery after a few days of recuperation. When Xing Danqing saw Su Zi jumping around and even using a flying sword, she was so shocked that her jaw almost dropped to the ground. Heavens! Su Zi's heart disease was actually cured by Jun Muyan. What kind of joke was that? Isn't Jun Muyan the ruler of Qingyun? Wasn't he supposed to be assisting the zither player? Wasn't he a talisman master? How could she cure the heart disease that even the divine doctor of Ziyun realm could not cure? If a person could become like this, how could he give others a way out? The saddest thing was that such a heaven-defying student was not from their Phoenix Sky Academy. If Jun Muyan was from their Phoenix Sky Academy, then at the Dear Cry banquet, held by the Dragon Soaring Academy next year, their Phoenix Sky would definitely be able to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. What kind of luck did the Starry School have to meet such a monstrous student? Oh, it wasn't just one. Including the 5-year-old child, there were 8 of them. Xing Danqing was so jealous that she wanted to cry. Therefore, when he saw that Su Zi had recovered, he immediately urged Su Zi to return to Fengtian with him. In fact, he was going to escort Su Zi back to the Su family in the Ziyun realm. Su Zi's health was beyond cure, and his influence in the Su family was not small. Now that he had completely recovered, it was very likely that he would directly change the structure of the Su family. Su Zi was reluctant to part with her, but he also knew that now that he had recovered from his mental illness, he definitely had to return to the Su family in the Ziyun domain. He tugged on Muyan's sleeve and refused to let go. "Little Jejie, can you come back to Ziyun realm with me? I guarantee that even if you want to go to Dragon Soaring Academy, I will definitely think of a way to let you in. Mu Yang smiled helplessly. Z, you've said this 180 times already. Su Zi's face fell immediately, and his clear eyes dimmed. That's because you won't agree to it, little missy. Mu Yang, I will go to the Ziyun realm, but not now. When Dragon Soar Academy holds the Dear Cry banquet, I will look for you. Only then did Su Zi's mood improve a little. Then don't forget, little missy. You must inform me when you reach the Ziyun realm. Saying that, he takes out a paper crane and gives it to Mu Yang. That paper crane was somewhat similar to the messenger paper cranes that Mu Yang had seen before, but it was not white, but purple. Its shape was also much more exquisite than ordinary messenger paper cranes. This is a third-grade messenger crane. As long as it's within the purple cloud realm and it's not a mystic realm or a mustard seed space, I'll be able to receive your message. Su Zi couldn't help but remind her over and over again, little missy, you must look for me when you arrive at the Ziyun realm. Mu Yang's ears are going to get calluses from listening. She doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. Good, 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 I'll remember it all. Z, have you forgotten that you haven't fulfilled your promise to me? Even if you don't miss me, I will definitely go and find you. Su Zi stares blankly for a moment, then immediately remembers that Mu Yang let her spiritual pet borrow his body. Such a thing, ordinary people would certainly be in fear and trepidation. Now that his mental illness has been cured, he would avoid it like the plague. Chapter 17:13. But Su Zi's eyes brighten all of a sudden, even the tear mole under his eye shines brightly. It's as if he's suddenly found a bond with Mu Yang, and knows that he won't be unable to see the little sister forever, so he's happy. Then, little sister, we have a deal. You must come find me. At that time. He glances at Xingdanqing and lowers his voice. At that time, I'll lend my body to little sister's spiritual pet, no matter how many days. As soon as he finished speaking, Xingdanqing urged him again. Even Lu Jinhang comes forward and tugs at Su Zi. Only then does Su Zi hang his head listlessly, looking back every 3 steps as he follows Lu Jinhang and Xingdanqing onto the spaceship. Lu Jinhang cups his hands at Mu Yang. See you at the dear feast of Dragon Soar Academy. After a pause, he says again, at that time, our Team Monarch will be even stronger, and definitely won't lose to your carefree team. Mu Yang smiles and waves at them, then watches them leave amidst Su Zi's teary eyes. Qi Huang's sneering voice reaches her ears, pretending to be a pitiful pretty boy, no matter how many days. Blag. Does this sage want to use that broken body of his? Mu Yang touches her forehead. Qi Huang, you'll still need to borrow someone else's body in the future, so don't take advantage of it and pretend to be obedient. Qi Huang immediately flies into a rage. Jun Mu Yang, you bastard, do you really like that pretty boy? You actually favor him and not me. Mu Yang, I'm really fucking stupid, not learning from my lesson and talking to this guy again. Mu Yang ignores Qi Huang's unreasonable behavior, and is about to go find her son. As soon as she turns around, she's met with a pair of cold and hostile eyes, almost startling her. I say, Xinglang, don't you know that scaring people can scare people to death? Mu Yang glares at Xinglang, who's not far away. After Di Mingju left, Xinglang silently went to live in the Yaoguang branch. Of course, it's to protect Mu Yang and Xiao Bao. Xinglang is half dead with anger. What he wants the most is to follow Di Mingju, to follow his most beloved emperor to gallop on the battlefield, unhindered. Who would want to follow this bitch and protect her? Unfortunately, he had already angered Jun Shong time and time again because he hated Jun Muyan. Jun Shong has already placed him on the key observation list. If there was the slightest mistake, Xinglang believed that Jun Shong would definitely skin him alive. No, it's not a big deal to skin him alive. What Xinglang was most afraid of was that Jun Shong would directly expel him from the polar domain, henceforth not wanting him anymore. As long as he thought of this possibility, the Star Wolf was scared out of his wits and did not dare to act rashly anymore. However, Xinglang was extremely unwilling to have him personally protect Jun Muyan and her little bastard child born from her adulterous husband. Therefore, he had been hiding in a corner of the Alcade institution. His divine sense covered the entire Alcade branch. In any case, he only needs to guarantee that Jun Muyin and her son won't be in danger. Who knew that when he used his divine sense on Muyin's side today, he would actually discover that Muyin, this fickle woman, was pulling on another man, tangling with him. Furthermore, it was actually the gigolo that he had caught in the act last time. Xing Lang immediately flares up in anger, and he rushes over without thinking. Hearing Muyin's words, Xing Lang restrains his anger and sneers. Only a person with a guilty conscience would be distracted. Jun Muyin, you wouldn't want to do something that would let Jun Shong down, right? I'm warning you, if you dare to betray Jun Shong, Balala. Chapter 1714. Star Wolf started a new round of threats and preaching. Mu Yang rolls her eyes and turns around to leave. She had already figured out Star Wolf's methods. This guy is Di Mingju's brainless fan through and through, and has already reached the level of a pervert. She must be out of her mind to reason with him. Xing Lang sees that Mu Yang doesn't have the slightest bit of shame or repentance, and still wants to leave. He immediately flares up and teleports in front of her. Jun Muyin, are you listening or not? Do you know how good His Majesty is to you? For you, His Majesty even rejected the marriage alliance with the Demon Lord's daughter. Do you know how great the power of the Polar Domain will be if the Demon Sovereign and the Polar Domain unite by marriage? Mu Yang suddenly stopped and narrowed her eyes. Marry the daughter of the Demon Lord. When Xing Lang saw that she finally faced his problem, he couldn't help but laugh complacently. That's right. Do you know what kind of existence the Devil Lord's daughter is? If Lord marries the daughter of the Demon Sovereign, no, you don't need to marry her. As long as Lord agrees to enter into a 3-year marriage contract with the Demon Sovereign's daughter, the Polar Domain will be able to form an alliance with the demon race and completely suppress our enemy, the Nether Domain. But because of you, His Lordship completely refused to consider the Demon Sovereign's daughter. Now that the Demon Sovereign's daughter has already entered into an engagement with someone from the Nether Realm, the alliance between the demon race and the Nether Realm will naturally pose a great threat to our Polar Domain. Mu Yang's brows slightly wrinkle. Why didn't Di Mingju tell me? Star Wolf sneered. You are just a small cultivator from the lower realm. What did Lord Shong say to you? What do you know? Now you should know how good Jun Shong is to you, right? In the end, you didn't even know how to be grateful. You actually hooked up with other men over and over again. You're simply a promiscuous and shameless woman. Mother. Just as Star Wolf was cursing excitedly, a clear and cold voice of a child rang out. Then, a small figure pounced into Mu Yang's arms like lightning. She then turned her head and glared at him fiercely. Mother, where did this bad guy come from? Is he bullying you? Star Wolf's curses were still on the tip of his tongue. At this moment, when he suddenly met the little boy's big, icy blue eyes, he was immediately stuck, unable to say a word for a long time. Where did this kid come from? How could there be a pair of eyes so similar to the god monarch's? The moment he saw him, he almost thought that he was looking at the young emperor. Although Star Wolf had never seen the Emperor Lord when he was young, he had seen Moju in Tianguang ruins. Apart from the facial features, the little boy in front of him is different from Di Mingju. But that pair of eyes, as well as that chilly aura and pressure, were exactly the same as their Jun Shong. Xiaobao frowned slightly and said coldly, "Were you cursing my mother just now? Who are you?" Mu Yang reaches out to stroke Xiaobao's head and says with a smile, "He's your father's subordinate." Xiaobao immediately shouted, "Daddy doesn't have such subordinates. Daddy's subordinates are Uncle Han Yi and Sister Ying Mai, they're all good people." In other words, the person in front of him was a bad person. Star Wolf's mouth was wide open, and only reacted after a long while. He stammered, he is your son? This is the son of Jun Muyin and her adulterous husband. The bastard he mentioned. Mu Yang says unhurriedly, yes. Chapter 1715. How is this possible? So similar, him, how could he be your son? Star Wolf was so excited that he couldn't speak coherently. This scoundrel actually dared to question whether he was his mother's son? Xiaobao was even more furious. He couldn't endure it any longer. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the Bixie sword and fiercely attacked the Star Wolf. Star Wolf naturally didn't dare to fight with Little Bao. Not to mention that his mission in the Yaoguang branch was to follow the Emperor's orders to protect Muyin and her son. Moreover, facing Little Bao, the Star Wolf's diehard fan heart that was restless towards the Emperor was ignited again. This is obviously the son of the Jun Muyin that he hates the most, but he is inexplicably a little timid, and also a little eager to get close to him. He absolutely could not bear to injure him. However, Star Wolf's thoughts had only spun for a short while before it was completely replaced by shock and astonishment. Star Wolf originally thought that even if Xiaobao's eyes and imposing manner were similar to Di Mingju's, but how powerful could a 5-year-old child be? Even if he just stood there and let him hit him, the attacks that landed on his body would only be like tickles. However, reality gave him a heavy slap in the face. When the Bixie sword flew in front of him, Star Wolf felt that something was wrong. What was surging around him was not spiritual power, but solid immortal power. Star Wolf was completely dumbfounded. This is the Xiuzhen continent, apart from people like Jun Shong who have cultivated godly power. When other immortals came to the cultivation continent, which one of them didn't have the intelligence to use spiritual energy, but couldn't use immortal energy? But right now, what was surging around him was clearly rich immortal power. As such, there was only one possibility. Xiaobao was born with an immortal physique, just like the Emperor. Moreover, he had already broken through the shackles of cultivators, forging a false immortal body. But this was a 5-year-old baby. On the cultivation continent, many cultivators still couldn't get rid of their mortal bodies and forge an immortal body even after they were 200 to 300 years old. But this kid was already an immortal at the age of 5. This caused Star Wolf's mind to be in a mess. And that ordinary-looking sword made Star Wolf even more incredulous. An ordinary magic treasure from the cultivation continent actually made him feel a terrible threat. How could this be? Even if it was the best divine weapon in the cultivation continent, it was just a piece of scrap metal in the eyes of the Star Wolf. Before this sword came close, Star Wolf didn't care about it at all. It was only when he got close to the sword that he sensed the murderous aura emanating from the sword that he was shocked. The baleful aura of the exorcism sword was not the baleful aura of an ordinary fiendish cultivator or fiend. Instead, it was a kind of scorching baleful yang qi. When Xiaobao infused his immortal energy into the sword, he activated the evil warding sword's murderous aura. It made people feel as if even the spiritual power and air around them were burning and boiling. Star Wolf hurriedly tried to dodge. However, being caught off guard, he had no way of dodging and could only awkwardly roll away. In the end, before he could crawl up, Little Bao's attacks had already descended once more like raindrops. A third-stage false immortal would naturally not be able to cause any harm to the Star Wolf. But the problem was that Star Wolf didn't dare to resist. Therefore, he could only be chased around the square by Little Treasure. The scene was especially lively. When Luo Yu came over from the training ground, she saw the chaotic scene, and then looked at Mu Yang, who was leisurely lying on the side, drinking tea and watching the show. She was confused. Sixth senior sister, who is Xiaobao fighting with? Did someone bully our Xiaobao? Chapter 1716. If there's really someone bullying their cute little nephew, then they absolutely have to be taught a good lesson. Muyin hands Luo Yu a spirit fruit, and unhurriedly says, "Rest assured, who can bully Xiaobao?" Luo Yu thinks so too. Their nephew is so strong, so awesome, who can bully him? Can't they see that the person in the square is looking for his teeth all over the floor from being whipped by their precious nephew? Thinking like this, Luo Yu also calms down. She happily munches on the spirit fruit that Muyin gave her, happily enjoying the sight of their nephew whipping people all over the square. Xiaobao chases after Xinglang for an hour, only then does he feel the resentment in his heart. He holds the Bixie sword that's almost as big as his small body, and coldly looks at Xinglang, Did father tell you to stay in Yarogwang branch to protect Nyangqin? Xing Lang naturally wouldn't be injured by Xiao Bao. With his cultivation, Xiao Bao's meager strength wouldn't even enter his eyes. But at this very moment, facing Xiao Bao's questioning, his forehead is faintly oozing with sweat. It's like he's not facing a 5-year-old child, but the real future little master of the polar domain. It's only now that Xing Lang realizes Han Yi's words, "I hope you still have the ability to call the little master a bastard when you see him." With great difficulty, Xing Lang presses down the churning thoughts in his heart, and lowers his eyes. Yes. Xiao Bao sneers, "So, this is how you protect Nyangqin? Who gave you the courage to actually dare insult my Nyangqin?" Xing Lang opens his mouth, I didn't. Of course, he doesn't want to insult Jun Muyan. In fact, after being fooled by Jun Muyan so many times, and almost being expelled from the polar domain by Jun Shong, he doesn't dare. He just wants to warn Jun Muyan, to let this woman remember Jun Shong's kindness. This, as he warns, his tone becomes a bit heavy. Xiao Bao slightly narrows his eyes. "You mean, I'm slandering you?" "No, this subordinate wouldn't dare." Xing Lang raises his head to meet Xiao Bao's cold, ice-blue eyes. He shivers all over, almost kneeling down and calling Jun Shong out of conditioned reflex. "Xiao Bao, then do you admit that you were wrong?" Star Wolf had the heart to refute, but the moment he saw little Bao, he unconsciously cowered in his heart. This subordinate knows his mistake. Xiao Bao immediately turns to look at Muyan. "Nyangqin, how do you think we should punish him?" Mu Yang beamed and said, "Then punish him to wear women's clothing for 3 days. Speaking of which, she couldn't forget Star Wolf's attire in The Little Cockroach. Xing Lang flies into a rage and curses, "Jun Muyan, don't go too far." Little Treasure pointed his evil warding sword at him, his blue eyes blazing with rage. "How dare you yell at my mother?" Star Wolf's body instantly stiffened. He looked at Xiao Bao with a wooden expression and said through gritted teeth, "Can you change the punishment conditions?" Xiao Bao said coldly, "Wear female clothing for 10 days. Star Wolf flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Why should I listen to you?" Xiao Bao slowly straightened his back. His crisp and childish voice sounded out word by word, but it carried boundless majesty. "Because I'm Daddy's son." Star Wolf's heart suddenly jumped, something seemed to explode in his mind. Soon after, all the blood in his body boiled. Since a long time ago, he had envied Elder Chang for being able to stay by Di Jun's side and witness Di Jun's growth. If only he had been able to assist Di Jun when he was young, protect him, and witness Di Jun's road to becoming a hegemon. But in the end, this idea was just wishful thinking. Chapter 1717. However, at this very moment, looking at the exquisite and beautiful Xiao Bao before him, Xing Lang feels as if he's really seeing the young Di Jun. Moreover, it's a living Jun Shong who can protect him as he grows up, and witness him complete his ambition. Xing Lang swallows, and finally bends his knees. He slowly kneels down on one knee, bowing and saying, "This subordinate obeys. In order to be able to accompany the future Di Jun of the polar domain, what's the point of wearing women's clothing for 10 days? Muyan immediately says excitedly, "Xiao Qi, quickly go to Fifth Brother's room and pick a few more women's clothes for Xing Lang. Pick the most gorgeous and sexiest ones." Luo Yu jumped up from her chair, completely enjoying the show. He, sixth senior sister, don't worry. I will definitely choose something that will satisfy you. Xing Lang, Jun Muyan, you." Before he could finish, Xiao Bao glares at him. Xing Lang immediately becomes listless, forcibly swallowing back the words at the tip of his tongue. Forget it. It's more important to let the little master calm down." Seeing Xing Lang's deflated appearance, Muyan smiles with uncontrollable joy. She pulls her baby son over and kisses him heavily. Sure enough, after Xiao Bao came back, her luck is really getting better and better. The Star Wolf, who was hard to deal with and stubborn in the past, was easily dealt with. Now, she can even see this guy wearing women's clothing. Life is really full of joy. The Tian family is now second only to the Nailan, Murong, and Lu families in Azure Blue World. But in fact, more than 10 years ago, the Tian family was still far from being on par with the 5 great families. Not to mention, it's above the Feng and Duan families. The reason is this year's Tian family's master, Tian Heibo. Tian Heibo was originally just an illegitimate son of the Tian family's master, and simply couldn't be seen in public. But he is extremely shrewd and scheming. On the outside, he looks honest and sincere, making people unguarded, but in the dark, he's incomparably sinister and ruthless. In the end, because he climbed into the limelight of a noble in Ziyun realm, he killed all of his brothers and sisters, and sat on the position of Tian family's master. After becoming the Tian family's master, Tian Heibo was strict and brutal, not allowing the slightest bit of disloyalty under his hands. Externally, they recruited talents everywhere and annexed the businesses of other small clans. So long as those cultivators that were recruited were slightly unwilling, they would be cruelly suppressed, and in the end, they would either submit obediently or have their cultivations destroyed and driven into a corner, and their fates were extremely miserable. As for those small clans that were annexed, their families were torn apart, and their people died. In just a dozen or so years, the Tian family had relied on sucking the blood of others to quickly gain a foothold among the great families of Azure Blue World. However, he was far from satisfied with such an achievement. Tian Heibo had been looking for all sorts of opportunities, wanting to swallow up the other great clans as well, finally becoming the overlord of the Azure Blue domain. He even wanted to enter the Purple Cloud domain and gain a foothold there. And now, what he urgently needed was something that he could present to the benefactor of the Ziyun realm. He wanted him to lend him a helping hand. Patriarch. A subordinate hurriedly walked in and bowed. There's news from the Azure Cloud world? Tian Heibo hugged the bewitching beauty in his arms. His big hands moved up and down her breasts, kneading them wantonly as he said casually, "How is it? Those sects that don't know what's good for them have finally tasted bitterness and are willing to submit." Cold sweat broke out on the subordinate's forehead. After a long while, he stammered, "Patriarch, the matter of unifying the Azure Cloud world, I'm afraid it'll be a little troublesome." Chapter 17-18. What did you say? Tian Heibo tightened his grip on the beauty in his arms. The coquettish beauty screamed as her face contorted from the pain. However, Tian Heibo grabbed her by the neck and threw her to the side. He said sternly, "Speak clearly. What happened? Are the people of the Azure Cloud world really that tough? They refuse to submit despite being suppressed like this." Saying that, he raised his foot and kicked his subordinate. "You bunch of trash, how do you do things?" The subordinate rolled on the ground from the kick. His face was covered in blood, but he did not dare to wipe it. He prostrated on the ground and said while trembling, "Family head, spare me. Family head, spare me. Tell me, what's going on? Family head, we were about to succeed." The subordinate hurriedly said in fear and trepidation, "Other than the largest Lee Fire sect and Mountain Breaking sect, the other small sects, such as Misty Cloud sect, Whole Unity sect, could no longer withstand our Tian family's suppression. They had decided to submit and become our Tian family's subsidiary. But who knew that a faction would suddenly appear in the Azure Cloud world? They went around lobbying, and finally, they managed to persuade those small sects and family clans to give up their allegiance to our Tian family, and instead, form an alliance with that faction." The veins on Tian Heibo's forehead throbbed. Finally, he could not bear it any longer. He stepped forward and ruthlessly stepped on the subordinate's back. With a cracking sound, the subordinate let out a blood-curdling scream and immediately fainted. But very quickly, he was awoken by a basin of ice water. What entered his ears was Tian Heibo's furious roar, "You bunch of trash, how do you do things? A mere faction of the Azure Cloud world, yet you can't do anything to them. A mere ant dares to block my Tian family's path. We just need to crush them to death. But what did you do? The plan I plotted for a year was destroyed just like that. I think all of you are sick of living. Family head, spare me." The subordinate cried bitterly and loudly begged for mercy. "It's really not that we don't want to crush that group of people, but that newly emerged force is extremely scattered. They come and go like ghosts, and their identities and backgrounds are all a mystery. No one knows where they came from, and we can't find their weaknesses. Furthermore, the most important thing is that they have the support of an incredible big shot behind them. For a mere green cloud world, we really don't dare to offend that big shot. That's why we can only retreat temporarily and come back to report to the family head. Then, we'll find another way, Tien Heibo said in a towering rage, a mere azure cloud world, merely a bunch of trash. What kind of major character can they have connections with, to actually dare oppose my Tien family? What kind of force is it? This subordinate only heard that force called themselves the Dark Flame Army. There were at least 1,000 of them. But the strange thing was that these people seemed to have appeared out of thin air. No one knew where they came from. Some people have also speculated that they might be ascended cultivators from the Yenwu continent. But that's not right. The number of people who have ascended in the Yenwu continent over the past hundreds and thousands of years, I'm afraid it still doesn't have this number. Tien Heibo frowned. Dark Flame Army? Never heard of it. So what if they have a lot of people? It's just a motley crew. Don't tell me that an entire Tien army can't destroy them. The subordinate shivered. No, it's not that we can't destroy them, but we don't dare to. Chapter 17-19. Although their origins are unknown, one of them seems to have a great relationship with a great figure of our azure blue domain. This is also the reason why the Misty Clouds sect and the others ultimately betrayed us and refused to accept the recruitment of our Tien family. Tien Heibo gritted his teeth. Which great figure is it? Could it be the Nalan family? No. The subordinate said softly. It's the richest man in azure blue domain, Zhu Fugue. Tien Heibo was startled, then flew into a rage. Zhu Fugue, that old dog, dares to obstruct my Tien family. But no matter how furious he was, Tien Heibo could not let his subordinate go to Azure Cloud Domain to do anything. Because Zhu Fugue's cultivation was not high, and his family power was not strong. But he had a very frightening background. That background was so strong that even though the Zhu family clearly did not have a single expert, and had mountains of crystals in the family, and controlled the major economic lifelines of Azure Blue Domain, no one dared to act against the Zhu family. Now that the Nether Flame Army that robbed the Sky Price Dao was related to the Zhu family. No matter how much Tien Heibo hated and was unwilling, he could only give up. Thinking that the thing that he had planned for half a year, that had almost fallen into his hands, was forcibly taken away, Tien Heibo was seething with anger. He fiercely slammed his palm on the table. The mahogany table was smashed into pieces. Get out of here. The subordinate scrambled to escape, but at the door, he bumped into a horse-faced man. Lord Luo Tien. The subordinate cried out in surprise when he saw him, then said in fear and trepidation, Lord Luo Tien, there's an accident in Azure Cloud Domain, the Patriarch is furious inside. Hearing this, Luo Tien did not have much fear, but laughed. Don't worry, the news I brought back will definitely improve the Patriarch's mood. Luo Tien quickly entered the room, respectfully bowing to Tien Heibo. Greetings to the Patriarch. Seeing him, Tien Heibo's expression did not improve at all, but was so gloomy. Di Yudao, that trash, as the Dean of Sky Academy, can't even handle such a small matter. It was a pity that the noble of the Purple Cloud Realm had entrusted such an important matter to that good-for-nothing Di Yudao to handle, and had even trusted him. If those matters were given to him, if he could really make friends with the noble of Purple Cloud Domain. What was Zhu Fugue? What was the Dark Flame Army of the Blue Cloud World? Nalan family and Lu family were nothing. As long as he had the help of a benefactor, he, Tien Heibo, would definitely be able to unify the Azure Blue world and become the sole ruler here. Patriarch, please calm down, Luo Tien hurriedly said, but this time, there are still benefits. This subordinate has discovered someone. Alone? Yes. Luo Tien's eyes shone brightly, his long and narrow horse-like face trembling slightly due to extreme excitement. As long as we have this person, This subordinate believes that our Tian family's business will definitely be able to reach new heights. And Patriarch, you will also have the opportunity to get acquainted with that noble person. Tian Heibo finally lost his composure. Who are you talking about? Luo Tian smiled mysteriously. Family head, have you heard of the Lord of Azure Sky, Yiliang Chen? Tian Heibo, of course I have. He was the most famous person in Azure Blue Realm right now. Didn't they say that all the great clans in the Azure Blue world searched everywhere but couldn't find a trace of him? Suddenly, he paused. Did you find it? Chapter 1720. Luo Tian said, yes, family leader. I went to help Di Yudao this time. Although I failed, I also discovered a big secret. That is the identity of the leader of the Qingyun sect, Yiliang Chen. She is the student from the Alcade branch who shone in the Jasper Forest Gathering, Jun Muyan. Tian Heibo did not participate in the Jasper Forest Gathering because he was busy with the Qingyun world. However, he heard his subordinates report about the Jasper Forest Gathering and the Three Schools tournament. Especially the female cultivator called Jun Muyan. She could be said to be on par with the leader of the Qingyun sect, Yiliang Chen. They were known as the Azure Blue Duo. There were even rumors that Jun Muyan was Yiliang Chen. However, it was just a guess. No one could prove it. Many people found it hard to believe. If Jun Muyan is really Yiliang Chen, then this woman is too monstrous. Tian Heibo suppressed his excitement and stared at his trusted subordinate. Are you sure that Jun Muyan is Yiliang Chen? It's absolutely true. This subordinate heard it from her own mouth. Also, Luo Tian told him about how Jun Muyan drew the soul-locking talisman in the air during the battle with Di Yudao. In this world, other than Yiliang Chen who won the finals of the Golden Heavenly Light competition, who else has the ability to draw such a powerful talisman? The more Luo Tian spoke, the more excited he became. Patriarch, let's not talk about this woman's devastatingly beautiful appearance and talisman drawing skills. Just the zither in her hands alone is something that even the Flowing Moon sect's Hall Master wants to snatch. That must be an incredible treasure. It might even be a divine weapon. Family leader, think about it. If we can recruit Jun Muyan to our Tian clan and get her to draw talismans for us, then give her Guqin to the nobles. Do we have to worry that our Tian clan cannot prosper? Tian Heibo got more excited as he listened. He could not control his emotions. Just like what Luo Tian said, if Jun Muyan was really Yiliang Chen. If they could recruit this woman, their Tian clan would be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. However, Jun Muyan is a student of the Starry School. To recruit her immediately, I'm afraid. Clan leader, you forgot that Di Yudao is already dead. There are only a few nascent soul cultivators left in the Starry School. Luo Tian smiled slyly. I've already found out. Xing Danqing has just returned to the Fengtian Academy, and Ning Yaoguang, who had escaped from the seal, has also left the Starry School. Now, the Starry School is like a group of dragons without a leader. Tian Heibo takes a deep breath. All right, you take people to recruit Muyan. No. For such an important talent, it is better for this family head to go personally. If she listens obediently and joins the Tian clan, then it's fine. But if she's stubborn, then don't blame me for taking the Starry School under the Tian clan. Famed clan lord. Luo Tian sucked up to him loudly. What is the Qingyun realm? How can it be mentioned in the same breath as the Starry School, a 1,000-year-old school? If we can make the Starry School become a subsidiary of the Tian clan, then the Tian clan's unification of the Azure Blue world will be just around the corner. These days, Muyan had been living a very comfortable life. Especially when she saw the cross-dressed Star Wolf shopping with her and attending public classes. Even though he was clearly furious, he did not dare to do anything. She was overjoyed. Not to mention, Star Wolf did not look ugly at all in cross-dressing. On the contrary, he looked very handsome. When the few of them were shopping, they even attracted the teasing and flirting with them. Chapter 1721. Muyan and the others almost choked with laughter at Star Wolf's embarrassment. Of course, that debauchee died miserably in the end. 10 days later, Star Wolf finally took off his female clothing. Muyan was extremely regretful. She wanted Xiao Bao to order Star Wolf to wear it for 2 more days. How could Star Wolf not know of her evil intentions? He turns around and disappears without a trace. Muyan hugs Xiao Bao and bursts into laughter. She occasionally eats the spirit fruits that Xiao Bao cut for her. Her days are really too good. Just then, a flying boat slowly descends from the sky. The new deacon of the academic council quickly steps forward and salutes Muyan. Miss Jun, there is an honored guest waiting for you at the school of the Emperor Star. Please go and meet him. Tian Heibo already had a preliminary impression of Jun Muyan from Luo Tian's description. But when he really saw her, he was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out. It's not just because Jun Muyan's appearance is too beautiful. She's 100 times more beautiful than all the mediocre beauties that the Tian family has gathered. It's also because the girl in front of him looks too young. For the cultivators of the Xiuzhen continent, 25 years old is just the beginning of adulthood. Generally, as long as one's cultivation is a bit higher, people in their 50s or 60s will look like they're in their early 30s. But Jun Muyan. Anyone with a bit of eyesight can see it. Her bones are at most 20 years old. Even in the Tri Academy, which only accepts young cultivators, this age is still very young. And it's this young girl who achieved something that no one in the Tri Academy has achieved for hundreds and thousands of years, reaching the top of the proclamation of Azure Clouds. No, not only did she reach the top of the proclamation of Azure Clouds, she's also the strongest auxiliary cultivator in the history of Azure Blue World. She's the talisman master who won the finals of the Golden Heavenly Light competition. Because the cultivation of talismans is very difficult and the results are very little, it can be said that in the entire Xiuzhen continent, there aren't many good talisman masters. Jun Muyan can even be said to be the #1 talisman master in the Xiuzhen continent. Tian Heibo's eyes shine as he looks at the beautiful girl in front of him, his heart in turmoil. If she's such a peerless beauty, even if he makes her the mistress of the Tian family, he won't lose face when he brings her out later. Thinking of this, Tian Heibo revealed a confident smile on his face. However, without waiting for him to speak, a middle-aged man sitting next to Tian Heibo immediately stands up. With a face full of solicitude, he says, "Student Muyan, this is the Tian family's master, Senior Tian Heibo. He specially came over to find you today. Quickly come over and pay respects to Patriarch Tian." Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. She recognized the middle-aged man who was speaking. In the Starry School, other than Di Yudao, there were 3 other deputy deans. Shu Iluan was one of them. There was also an old man with the highest cultivation level. He had entered seclusion a few years ago in an attempt to break through to the late nascent soul stage, but he had yet to emerge. The only one left was the middle-aged man in front of him. His name was Jiang Taihong, and he was one of the few remaining nascent soul cultivators in the Starry School. Now that Di Yudao had fallen from grace, Jiang Taihong, as the vice-dean, should have been the one to take the dean's seat. However, he was too close to Di Yudao. Although he wasn't in cahoots with Di Yudao, he had done a lot of bootlicking on a daily basis. As a result, in the election of the temporary dean this time, the deans and teachers of the various schools would rather Meng Baichuan than Jiang Taihong. Chapter 1722. Of course, Jiang Taihong was not convinced. However, Meng Baichuan was the dean of Qianshu Institute and led a group of unruly genius students. There was no need to doubt his own ability. Moreover, in terms of cultivation, Meng Baichuan was not inferior to Jiang Taihong at all. The students of Qianshu Institute even used their family's influence to support their teacher Meng's ascension to the position of Starry School's chief dean. It was said that when Meng Baichuan was confirmed as the acting dean, Jiang Taihong flew into a rage and smashed almost everything in Meng Baichuan's bedroom. Recently, whenever Jiang Taihong saw the students of Qianshu Institute and Yaoguang Institute, he would not recognize them at all. Mu Yang did not feel flattered when he was suddenly so polite to her today. Instead, she had goosebumps all over her body. Student Jun Muyan, Master Tian has come here today to bring you and the students of the Alcade branch with great news. Mu Yang had just sat down when Jiang Taihong spoke impatiently. Great news? Mu Yang asked. Yes. Jiang Taihong's face was glowing. Chief Tian wants to recruit everyone in the Xiao Yarrow team to join the Tian clan. Also, you don't have to wait for your graduation. You can go to the Tian clan now and become our trusted aides. Mu Yang raised her eyebrows and said slowly, we are doing well in Starry School. Why do we have to go to the Tian clan? Or does Vice College Chief Jiang want to kick us out like College Chief Zhai did? Jiang Taihong's face froze and he said angrily, how can you say that? I am fighting for a better future for the students of Yaoguang Institute. How can that be the same as what Di Yudao is doing? Mu Yang sneered. You still have to ask if we are willing. Jiang Taihong was furious. A mere student who had not even grown her hair was already climbing over his head. Indeed, those who hung out with Meng Baichuan and Ning Yaoguang were not good people. He was about to slam the table in anger but was stopped by Tian Heibo. Tian Heibo's face was full of arrogance. He said slowly, Miss Jun, why don't you listen to the generous treatment that the Tian clan can give you after you go to the Tian clan? First of all, each of you will be paid 10,000 high-grade crystals per year. As long as you report to me, you can choose whatever you want from the Tian family's treasury. Secondly, my Tian family has thousands of private soldiers. Every one of them was an expert above the level of fasting. All the Golden Core experts who seek refuge with my Tian family will be given at least 50 Tian family private soldiers as subordinates. Miss Jun, although you are not at the Gold Core stage, I am very optimistic about your talent and future, so I made an exception to let you each lead a team of 50 private soldiers. Lastly, our Tian clan will take over your talisman shop in Tianguang Ruins. Under the management of our Tian family, I'm sure that store will prosper day by day. Originally, the businesses that belong to my Tian family would not receive any profits. However, on account of Miss Jun's face, this patriarch will make an exception once again and allow you to take 10% of the profits from that shop every year. Before Tian Heibo could finish his confident words, Mu Yang finally couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. This Patriarch Tian. Let me say, have you ever asked around how much profit the old man is making? Chapter 1723. Tian Heibo was a man of his word, and no one could defy him. At this time, he was suddenly interrupted by Mu Yang in such a mocking and disdainful tone. He immediately frowned. But in the end, he still maintained his demeanor and sneered, it's just a small talisman shop, how much income can it have? 10,000 crystals a year. It's indeed not bad, but if my Tian family takes it over, we can definitely double the income. Tian Heibo also went to take a look at the shop. The location of the shop was remote, and the shop was very small. When he went there weren't many customers inside. Although he was the #1 talisman master in the Xiozhen continent, talismans were still talismans. How could they be compared with elixirs and magic treasures? So Tian Heibo felt that the shop's annual income of tens of thousands of crystals was already the limit. But he also thought that if the Tian family took over the shop, he would go outside to buy more defective products and sell the talismans that were pretending to be Yiliangchens. At that time, his annual net income would definitely increase by a lot. Who knew that when he said this, Mu Yang directly rolled her eyes. Even the few students standing behind Jiang Taihong showed an expression of holding back their laughter. The respect and fear in their eyes when they looked at Tian Heibo had now been mixed with a trace of disdain. Jiang Taihong said angrily, what kind of attitude is this? Master Tian asked you a question. Didn't you hear? Isn't the annual income of 10,000 high-grade crystals for a mere talisman shop? Ahem. Vice Principal Jiang, actually, you can go to Tianguang Ruins and inquire about it. The income of the old man is #1 in the world store is more than 10,000 crystals a month. The student standing at the back kindly reminded him, Tianguang Ruins has a hidden list of shops' popularity and profits. You can check it by spending crystals. On that list, the old man is number 1 in the world shop has never fallen from the top 10. The student said and glanced at Mu Yang. There was one more sentence that he didn't say. This kind of sales result was produced under the situation that the supply of the shop was far from meeting the demand. The shop's daily supply of talismans was limited, especially those mutated talismans. There were only a few of them every day. The most sought-after barrier-breaking talisman had been booked for a year. One could well imagine how terrifying the sales volume would be if the sale of talismans was completely open to the public. Mu Yang listened to the student's narration and couldn't help but ridicule Qi Huang in the space. Qi Xiao Huang, did you hear that? How much money did my world's number 1 shop earn? Other than the salary that was given to North Sunflower, Xiong Nuan, and the rest, as well as the portion that was left for Master, almost all of it has been squandered by you. You wastrel, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have given you the flowing light seal. Mu Yang originally wanted to share the income of the shop with everyone in the Xiaoyaro school. Unfortunately, Yun Ruohan and the others felt that they hadn't put in any effort, and refused to accept it no matter what. Therefore, Mu Yan could only give her master Shi Qing a bigger portion. As for Luo Yunxiao, when Mu Yan proposed to give him a cut of the shop, Luo Yunxiao waved her hand and a small hill of obsidian crystals appeared. Obsidian crystal. That was a piece of obsidian crystal that was worth tens of thousands of high-grade crystal stones. Chapter 1724. How could other people be willing to spend it? They would treat it as a rare refining material, and mix it into their magic weapons. But her family's little martial uncle is good, he directly treats it like a pile of gravel, and takes it as a small hill. Mu Yang immediately retreats in shame, and from then on, she never dared to mention the matter of giving him crystal stones in front of little martial uncle. It's better if she goes to hug little martial uncle's thigh and let him give her some crystal stones through his fingers. Of course, thinking about it is just thinking about it. Mu Yang absolutely doesn't dare. Otherwise, if Di Mingju, that stingy big vinegar jar, knew that she asked little martial uncle for crystal stones but not him, Di Mingju would definitely steam, fry, boil, and fry her, all 18 kinds of torture. As for Qi Huang, he was completely driven mad after his Shishu took out a pile of obsidian crystal. He could allow himself to be compared by any stupid person, but he would never allow that person to be little martial uncle. Mu Yang really suspects more than once, is Qi Huang really not in a love-hate relationship with little martial uncle? This kind of thing, it's almost like I only have eyes for you, love you, hate you, bite you to death. Since that day, she doesn't know what Qi Huang and Little Phoenix are up to in Tianguang ruins, but they're acting mysterious every day, and spending more and more crystal stones. Qi Huang sneers, isn't this because you're too useless? I asked you to draw 2 more talismans every day, to learn how to draw high-level talismans, but you refused. Otherwise, how could you only have this little income? Those tens of thousands of crystal stones, it's not even enough to fill the gaps between Benzun's teeth. Jun Mu Yang, I'm warning you, you'd better hurry up and earn more crystal stones for Benzun, otherwise I'll secretly leave a note to Di Mingju, saying that you're raising a lot of pretty boys outside, and the biggest one is that bastard Luo Yunxiao. At that time, that narrow-minded Di Mingju will definitely strangle Luo Yunxiao to death. Mu Yang. Damn it, she doesn't know if it's too late to strangle this dead tool spirit now. Tian Heibo and Jiang Taihong don't know about the interaction between Mu Yang and Qi Huang, and they also don't know that Mu Yang's shop is raking in gold every day. But now, those crystal stones are completely out of her hands. Often, as soon as they reach the Jade Key, that little bastard Qi Huang will plunder them clean. After listening to this student, they are completely shocked. An income of more than 10,000 crystals a month. The top 10 shops in Tianguang ruins? What did that mean? The top 10 shops in Tianguang ruins were either those that had been in business for 1,000 years, such as the Immortal Assembling restaurant that held the Spirit Chef tournament, or those shops that were opened by the great sects and families of the Purple Cloud domain. When did a small shop that sold talismans have such a heaven-defying profit? Tian Heibo's eyes suddenly lit up. The anger and humiliation from being ridiculed had all turned into greed at this moment. If the Tian family could obtain this kind of shop and this kind of Jun Muyan, then the Tian family would certainly be like a tiger that had grown wings. Perhaps in less than a year, they would be able to leap to become the #1 family in Azure Blue World. Tian Heibo's sinister eyes immediately narrowed into a smile. I didn't investigate carefully and underestimated Miss June. However, what I said just now was not all of the sincerity of my Tian family. He slowly straightens up and leans towards Mu Yang, revealing an expression of adoration and deep affection. In fact, the reason I came to look for Miss Jun alone this time is to ask to marry Miss Jun as my official wife. What does Miss Jun think about it? Chapter 1725. As soon as these words came out, the whole room fell into a deathly silence. Muyan, who was quarreling with Qi Huang in her sea of consciousness, was startled back to her senses by these words. She almost wanted to dig her ears to see if she had misheard. And Qi Huang was already stamping with rage in the space. Damn old bastard, keep dreaming. A dead toad still wants to eat swan meat. Watch as this Zun peels off his skin, pulls out his tendons, and breaks him into pieces to feed the dog. Jiang Taihong looks at Muyan with shock and jealousy, but he still couldn't help but say, Master Tian, have you really thought it through? Although classmate Muyan's talent is outstanding, she doesn't have any family background. In the past, when the heads of the big families got married, it was basically a marriage alliance. The matriarchs of the family also had an extraordinary background. What's more, Jiang Taihong's voice is somewhat difficult to speak. I'm afraid you still don't know, classmate Muyan. She got pregnant before marriage, and now has a 5-year-old child. I'm afraid she's not worthy of you, Master Tian. Hearing Jiang Taihong's words, Tian Heibo's face really darkens a bit. He's played with countless women, whether it's by force or coercion. Which one of them wasn't clean and pure? This Muyan looks like a young onion, but he didn't expect her to be so flowery and shameless. She hasn't even gotten married, but she's already no longer a virgin, and has a child. According to his traditional and strong thinking, such a dirty woman, even if she's a peerless beauty, he can only play with her at most. Letting her sit in the position of Tian family's matriarch is simply a great humiliation to him, Tian Heibo. But when he thinks of the huge benefits that marrying Muyan would bring, Tian Heibo presses down the displeasure welling up in his heart. Hehe, isn't it just a woman? When he's tired of playing with her, he'll squeeze out all her value and directly give her away as a plaything. To devour. The position of Tian family's matriarch can be changed at any time. A gentle smile once again hangs on Tian Heibo's face. What I admire is Miss June. I can ignore her past. However, after Miss Jun marries me, it's best that you don't show your face outside like you do now. Just stay at home and draw talismans, and manage the household chores. As for that son of yours, it's best to sever all ties with him. After all, it won't be a good thing if word of this spreads out. My Tian family has always been strict and strict. I, Tian Heibo, am a reputable person in the entire Azure Blue World. As my wife, I naturally need to have a dignified and virtuous temperament. I believe Miss Jun understands this, right? Mu Yang originally wanted to speak, but after listening to the end, she leisurely drank her tea, stood up, and walked out. Tian Heibo and Jiang Taihong were dumbfounded by her actions. It wasn't until she reached the door that Jiang Taihong angrily said, Jun Muyan, what are you doing? Master Tian is talking to you. It's fine if you don't answer, but how can you just casually leave? Don't you have any manners? Mu Yang unhurriedly comes back to her senses. Leaning against the door frame, she sneers, my manners and upbringing are prepared for those who are similarly educated. As for those shameless toads who don't have the least bit of self-awareness and still like to boast, I'm sorry. Forgive me for not having much upbringing, but I won't casually waste it. Tian Heibo's complexion suddenly changes. Gritting his teeth, he says, Jun Muyan, what do you mean by that? Chapter 1726. I don't understand what you're saying. My junior sister is saying that you're a toad that wants to eat swan meat. Lung Yumo's voice suddenly came from outside. The people from the Xiaoyaro school quickly walked to Muyan's side. Lung Yumo looked Tian Heibo up and down, the disdain in her eyes almost overflowing. TSK, a toad? I think he's a toad. Luo Yu laughed. I think there's something wrong with this person's brain. Otherwise, why doesn't he take a piss and look at himself? Where did he get the face to say that he wants to marry sixth senior sister? If Tutor Mo heard this, Luo Yu could guarantee that this person would have been torn apart by 5 horses. Tian Heibo had never been humiliated like this before. He was stunned by the scolding. Jiang Taihong slammed his palm on the table and cursed, impudent. What kind of attitude is this? Tian Heibo, the clan leader, is an important guest of the Starry School. Who allowed you to speak to him like this? Why don't you kneel and apologize? Apologize? Sorry, Jiang. Vice College Chief, where did we go wrong? Lung Yumo said unhurriedly, an old man in his 70s or 80s wants to marry our junior sister. Are we wrong to call him a toad? Oh, that's right. I did insult the toad by saying that. I'm willing to apologize to the toad. Lung Yumo patted her mouth. I should say that he's worse than a maggot in a manure tank. After all, maggots know how smelly they are. They won't just crawl out to disgust people. Muyan almost couldn't hold back her laughter. Her 4th senior sister's battle power was getting stronger and stronger, both verbally and in actual combat. In the past, when she met such a shameless person, she had to argue with him. Now that she had 4th senior sister and Xiao Qi, she had no room to speak. Before she could say anything, the other party was already fuming with anger. Just look at Tian Heibo. The man who was smiling arrogantly and hypocritically a while ago, now had a completely twisted face. A strong murderous intent burst out from his eyes. Alcade branch, good, good. As soon as the last word good came out, Muyan's eyes suddenly narrowed. The next moment, the Tianmo Qin appeared in her hands. The sound of the Gu Qin rang out. In the blink of an eye, a sound wall appeared in front of them. At the same time, the sound of the zither turned into blades, and hundreds of sword qi shot out. Bang! 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 Countless sparks exploded in the small room. The surrounding desks and furnishings were affected and shattered. Dust filled the air. The students behind Jiang Taihong were so frightened that they retreated to a corner. The dust slowly dissipated, revealing Tian Heibo's incredulous and shocked face. He was a nascent soul cultivator. Although he was only at the 1st level, in the Azure Blue realm, other than the Naylan clan's patriarch, Naylan Qing, who was at the 3rd level, the other nascent soul cultivators were at most at the 2nd level. It could be said that Tian Heibo could do whatever he wanted in the entire Azure Blue realm. However, just then, he used 50% of his power in order to teach these audacious people from the Alcade branch a lesson. But his attack was easily resolved by Jun Muyan's zither notes. How was this possible? Could it be that Jun Muyan's strength was already comparable to the peak of core formation? A little girl at the stage of fasting, but she had strength comparable to the peak of core formation. How many people would go crazy if such news were to spread? Chapter 1727. How did she do it? Was it because of the barrier-breaking talisman? Yes, it must be because of the barrier-breaking talisman. If the barrier-breaking talisman did not have such a terrifying effect, how could a mere talisman shop have such a huge income? Devouring stared at Mu Yang. In his heart, he was even more determined to get this woman. He took a deep breath and said coldly, Jun Mu Yang, do you really want to do this the hard way? Mu Yang put away the Tian Mo Qin slowly and chuckled. Then why don't you take out the punishment wine first and let me see if it's enough for me to eat? Don't be too arrogant, Tian Heibo said, gritting his teeth. Do you know how many clans have resisted the Tian clan all these years and how they ended up? There are many golden essence cultivators in those clans and some even have backers. But in the end, Without exception, they all became stepping stones for the Tien clan. Do you think you can be arrogant just because you are talented and strong? Don't forget that there are only 7 people in the Alcade branch. If the Tien clan wants to kill you, it will be easier than killing a few ants. It's good for young people to be arrogant, but excessive arrogance is overestimating one's capabilities. He glanced at the people of the Xiaoyaro school with disdain. I advise you to quit while you're ahead. If you pledge allegiance to the Tien clan now, I promise to give you all the benefits. But if you really anger me, then those clans that were destroyed will be your example. Seeing that Tian Heibo's tone had softened, Jiang Taihong immediately stood up to smooth things over. Tien clan leader is really magnanimous. These kids don't know what's good for them, but you are still willing to give them a chance. Saying this, he glared at Mu Yang and the others. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and apologize to the Tien clan leader. Clearly, no, I think you should leave with the Tien clan leader today. I will take care of the procedures for you. Mu Yang sneered. Vice college leader Jiang, since you want to go to the Tien clan so much, why don't you go yourself? The Alcade branch will not fight with you. Hehe, that's right. Luo Yu said with a smile. I saw how attentive Vice College Chief Jiang was to the Tien clan leader. I thought that you were not the college chief of our starry school, but a lackey of the Tien clan. TSK. No wonder Vice Dean Jiang was so magnanimous and gave the position of dean to Instructor Meng. Jiang Taihong was so angry that he almost fainted when he heard this. What did he mean by giving it to Instructor Meng? It was clearly that bastard Meng Baichuan who forcefully snatched the position of dean from his hand. If it wasn't for the sake of snatching back the position of dean from Meng Baichuan, would he have needed to curry favor with Tian Heibo? At this moment, Tian Heibo's stamina was completely exhausted. But this time, he didn't make a move. Instead, he stared coldly at the high-spirited youths in front of him, thinking about how these youths would soon turn into dried leaves in his hands and be ravaged by him. Tian Heibo's face revealed a sinister smile. Seems like you guys have made up your mind to go against my Tien clan. Good, then don't blame me, Tian Heibo, for being rude. During this period of time, Meng Baichuan, who had just become the college chief, was extremely busy every day. It was really because Di Yudao had left behind too many messes. Furthermore, the starry school was in dire need of instructors and college chiefs. It made him want to split himself into two. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.